My father's family was a farmer's family, and during the First World War my father was called to do his duty in the Austrian army, and after the war was over he went back to the village, but for the first time he saw that there is a town called Vienna which impressed him. So he suggested to his family to sell the agricultural land and everything they had and re-establish themselves in Vienna. His suggestion was accepted, and they moved to Vienna and established themselves. He went into the cinema business. They bought a cinema in Vienna, and I was born later in 1926. So when I was born, there was already a sister of mine in the family, and she was actually 9 years older than I am. But she played a very important part in my education, because I saw her more as an educational person than my mother or a nanny or anything else. So I was actually educated by my sister. I had a normal life. We had a good living. We lived behind the parliament. It was a good area. I had friends. Schools were in the vicinity. I went to school there. But anyhow, I must remember a very decisive accident that happened to me. When my nanny and I were in the Central Park one day, when I was about 4 or 5 years old. It was before school, and I played with other children in the sandbox. And while playing there, I played also with two twins called Hans and Herbert. One of them asked me, "Are you Jewish?" So I said, why, what does it have to do with us? They said, because our parents do not permit us to play with Jewish children. Then we changed the subject and we played on. But anyhow, this incident followed me around. I asked myself, what do they want? Why do their parents not permit them to play with the Jewish children? Well, I knew that this was a delicate matter, and because it was delicate, it started to interest me more and more. And I wanted to know where I come from and where I'm going to. This was actually the trigger that made me go. So in the year 38, the Nazis moved into Austria, and they were welcomed by the local population because we were annexed to, we were not captured, but actually we were captured with music. They captured us, and the Nazi regime started within a few days to close bank accounts of Jews. We were, from one day to another, we were hungry. We had no food, we had no money to buy any food, and that's how it all started. So we came to the conclusion that we have, under no circumstances could we stay on in Austria. and we had to leave. Though my father was very much against it because it was his homeland. He fought the war for Austria, was twice wounded. But finally we joined an illegal immigration to Israel. We couldn't go anywhere else because visas were needed and so on, so we could not. The only option we had was to join, and as fast as possible, this illegal immigration. So one morning in December, I think it was the 29th of December 39, we left Vienna to Slovakia, Bratislava, and there went to a camp called Patronka, where other Jews from different places already concentrated for this illegal immigration. But then we could not carry on. We were to sail down the Danube to the Black Sea, but this couldn't be done because the Danube froze and no shipping was possible. So we were stuck in Slovakia, in Bratislava, for about 6-7 months until we could carry on. And that was in September 39. We went on board Danube ships, went down the Danube towards Sulina, where the delta to the Black Sea is, and there were 3 refugee ships waiting for us, and there were Atlantic, Pacific, and Milos. We were transshipped to the Pacific, others to the Milos and to the Atlantic, and we went on our way down the Bosporus, Dardanelles towards the Mediterranean Sea, and carried on towards Haifa, where we arrived after suffering a lot. There was no food, but the weather was good. The weather was good until one day there was a wedding on the forward part of the ship, and there were many people concentrated there, and this caused the stability to hesitate for some time, and the ship shook from side to side in a quiet sea, and we almost turned over. But then people sat down in panic, and the ship straightened again, and we could all go down. We went down into the lowest parts of the ship. I don't know why I call it a ship, because it was I have no words to explain what this was. This was a broken boat. Nothing worked, and even the crew were Greek, Yugoslavian, I don't know, a mixture who couldn't speak to each other. But anyhow, we reached Haifa on the around the 18th of November 1940. We were at anchor outside the port of Haifa, and suddenly we got food, because they brought food. We were fed, because on the way we starved. Everything turned better until we heard that inside the port of Haifa is a big ship, a 10,000-ton passenger ship with 3 big funnels, which was to take us to Mauritius, a Devil's Island at that time. Today it is a tourist paradise, but at that time there were tropical diseases and everything. We were supposed to be transferred by help of this ship to Mauritius. So they started transshipping us from outside the port, from the immigrant ships, to the ship Patria, which in the meantime was turned into a troop transporter, which transported troops from India to the Middle East. Indian troops. So this ship was stopped at Haifa, requisited, and the British authorities started transferring us from the immigrant ship to the Patria. And again, we heard rumors getting stronger and stronger that we were going to leave with the Patria to this Devil's Island, Mauritius. So we were surprised, because when we left Austria, our dream was to meet the British, who were at that time already at war with Germany. We had hundreds of young men who were eagerly willing to join the British forces to fight with the British against the Germans. But to our surprise, they wanted to deport us. So, I mean, this is not the kind of welcome we hoped for. So, anyhow, after a few days, a sabotage act occurred. The Haganah, the Jewish underground, intended to damage the ship in order to prevent its sailing. But the charge they put probably, or the place where they put it, was too strong, and the ship sank within a few minutes. I think it took less than 10 minutes. Luckily, my parents, we had a meeting place on deck, and I was down in the ship when the explosion occurred. So after the explosion, I immediately ran and climbed up to the deck, to the place where my parents were, and I made it, because in the meantime there was a panic and many people were blocking the stairs and they couldn't get out. I just made it and I joined them, and at this time the ship turned over towards its starboard side, to its right side. So my father and I helped my mother over the railing to the higher side, and then my father and I climbed over the railing, because it started to lay down on its starboard side until it hit the ground. It was inside the port, so it was not very deep. So actually, there were not many people on the port side, which was outside of the water. And there was a panic, and people, even people who didn't know to swim, ran and jumped into the water. Others were locked inside in various places where they couldn't get out from. But Finally, we were picked up by boats from the outside and taken to one of the stores on the shore, inside the port area. There, to our great surprise, there were British women volunteers who were already ready to serve us with tea, coffee, cakes, you name it. This was exactly the reception we expected when we came to Israel. It changed because we were in an emergency situation. And we were well served, and they also very much helped with the saving lives and taking people out of the water and so on. From this store, we were later in the evening, we were taken by buses to Atlit. Why were we taken to Atlit? Because we were survivors of a sunken ship, and the law said that survivors from a sunken ship had to be saved and taken to a safe place. But the others of the three ships who were not yet transferred to the Patria they were also brought to Atlit, but locked away from us, and a few days later actually shipped to Mauritius. And we who were at the sinking, we were saved. We could stay in the camp. But those who were not yet on the Patria were actually put on another ship and brought to Mauritius, where they stood a few years, I think 2 or 3 years. They had to stay there. Many of them died of tropical diseases, and it was not a dream of people who ran away from the Nazi regime to be sent to a devil's island and left to die there by diseases. This was the part of the people who were not yet on the Patria when it sank. It was just the law.